The summer heat pressed down on Naval Base San Diego like a heavy blanket, as Staff Sergeant Marcus Rodriguez made his way across the training compound. At 28, he carried himself with the confidence that came from 6 years as a Navy SEAL. His chest decorated with ribbons that told stories of missions in places most people couldn't pronounce. His teammates often joked that Marcus could spot a fellow warrior from a mile away, and he took pride in that ability. The morning briefing had been routine until Commander Walsh mentioned they'd be working with a new intelligence liaison from the Pentagon, someone with specialized knowledge about the mission they were preparing for in Eastern Europe. Marcus didn't think much of it at first. In his experience, Pentagon desk jockeys usually meant more paperwork and less action. But orders were orders. As he approached the briefing room, Marcus noticed a woman in navy dress blues, standing near the entrance, studying what appeared to be mission files. She looked young, maybe mid-20s, with shoulder-length brown hair pulled back in a regulation bun. Her uniform was crisp and professional, but something about her posture caught his attention. She stood with the kind of stillness that came from military training. Yet there was an alertness in her eyes as she scanned the documents that suggested real operational experience. Marcus had seen plenty of officers fresh out of the Naval Academy, and they usually had a certain nervous energy about them when they first encountered special operations personnel. This woman seemed different. There was a calmness to her demeanor that didn't match what he expected from someone he assumed was probably a junior intelligence officer. His teammate, Petty Officer Jake Sullivan, joined him as they walked toward the building. Jake was notorious for his ability to read people and situations, a skill that had saved their unit more than once during overseas deployments. "New intel officer looks sharp," Jake commented, nodding toward the woman. "Wonder if she's ever been outside the Beltway." Marcus nodded, but something nagged at him about the woman's bearing. She moved with purpose, not the tentative steps he'd seen from other Pentagon liaisons. When she turned to acknowledge their approach, her eyes met his directly, without the deference he'd grown accustomed to from junior officers meeting SEALs for the first time. The briefing room filled quickly with members of SEAL Team 7. These were men who had served together through multiple deployments, each one tested under fire and proven reliable. The atmosphere was relaxed but focused, the kind of professional camaraderie that developed between warriors who trusted each other with their lives. Commander Walsh entered with the woman in dress blues, and the room came to attention. "Gentlemen, I want you to meet our intelligence liaison for Operation Northwind. She'll be providing strategic oversight and real-time intelligence support for the mission." Marcus studied her as she was introduced to the team. Her handshake was firm when she greeted each SEAL, and she looked each man directly in the eye. There was no hesitation, no apparent intimidation despite being the only woman in a room full of elite special operations personnel. This intrigued Marcus more than he cared to admit. During the initial briefing, she demonstrated an impressive knowledge of the operational area, discussing terrain features, local political dynamics, and potential threat scenarios with the kind of detail that usually came from extensive field experience. Her questions were pointed and tactical, focusing on the practical challenges the team might face rather than abstract strategic concepts. "The primary infiltration route you've outlined has merit," she said, pointing to the map. "But intelligence suggests increased patrol activity along that corridor. There's an alternative approach through the Northern Valley that might provide better concealment, though it would add 6 hours to the timeline." Marcus found himself reassessing his initial assumptions. This wasn't typical briefing room theory. Her recommendations showed an understanding of how special operations actually worked, not just how they looked on paper. Several of his teammates exchanged glances that suggested they were having similar thoughts. As the formal briefing concluded, the team began discussing tactical details in smaller groups. Marcus noticed that rather than hanging back or deferring to the senior enlisted men, their liaison moved confidently among the groups, contributing to conversations about equipment loadouts and contingency planning. The afternoon training exercise was designed to test the team's ability to adapt their standard operating procedures to incorporate intelligence updates in real time. It was a scenario they'd run dozens of times, but with the added complexity of coordinating with their new liaison. Marcus watched as she positioned herself at the Tactical Operations Center, coordinating communications between the field teams and higher headquarters. Her radio discipline was flawless, and she seemed to anticipate information needs before requests came in from the field. During one particularly complex phase of the exercise, when multiple teams were converging on an objective, her coordination prevented what could have been a dangerous case of fratricide. "Where did you say you served before this assignment?" Petty Officer, First Class, Tony Chen asked during a brief pause in the exercise. Chen was the team's senior enlisted advisor, a man whose opinion carried significant weight with everyone from the newest team members to the commanding officer. "I didn't," she replied with a slight smile, but offered no additional information. Her response was polite but firm, suggesting that her background wasn't open for casual discussion. The exercise concluded successfully, and as the team gathered for the after-action review, Marcus found himself increasingly curious about their mysterious liaison. Her performance had been flawless, but more than that, she demonstrated an intuitive understanding of special operations that typically took years to develop. During the debrief, Commander Walsh praised the team's adaptation to working with intelligence support, noting that the exercise had run more smoothly than previous iterations. Several team members nodded in agreement, acknowledging that their liaison had contributed significantly to the success. As the formal debrief ended and team members began dispersing, Marcus decided to approach her directly. His curiosity had been building all day, and something about her competence and confidence suggested there was more to her story than a typical Pentagon assignment. "That was impressive work today," Marcus said, approaching her as she gathered her materials. "Your tactical awareness is better than most officers I've worked with. Where did you develop those skills?" She looked up from her files, studying his face for a moment before responding. "Experience," she said simply. "Same as everyone else here." The response was professional but evasive, which only increased Marcus's interest. In his experience, people who were genuinely accomplished didn't usually feel the need to be mysterious about their backgrounds, but there was something in her manner that suggested she wasn't being evasive out of insecurity or pretension. "Must have been some interesting assignments," Marcus pressed, hoping to learn more about her background. "The way you handled that communications coordination during the exercise, that's not something you pick up from a desk job." Her expression remained neutral, but Marcus thought he detected a hint of amusement in her eyes. "You'd be surprised what you can learn when you pay attention," she replied. The conversation was interrupted by Jake Sullivan, who had been discussing equipment modifications with other team members. "Hey Rodriguez, we're heading to Murphy's for dinner. You coming?" He glanced at their liaison. "You're welcome to join us if you'd like. Good way to get to know the team before we start mission prep." She considered the invitation for a moment before nodding. "That sounds nice, thank you." Murphy's Pub had been a gathering place for Navy personnel for decades, its walls covered with photos and memorabilia from ships and units that had made the establishment their unofficial headquarters over the years. The atmosphere was relaxed and informal, a sharp contrast to the professional environment of the base. As the evening progressed, Marcus found himself seated across from their liaison at a table full of SEALs, sharing stories from previous deployments. She listened attentively to the conversations, occasionally asking thoughtful questions but revealing little about her own experiences. "So what's the most challenging assignment you've had?" asked Petty Officer Second Class David Kim, the team's communications specialist. It was a question that usually led to entertaining stories about difficult missions or impossible deadlines. "Probably the one where I had to convince a team of Navy SEALs that a woman could provide useful intelligence support," she replied with a straight face, before allowing a small smile to indicate she was partially joking. The response drew laughter from the table, but Marcus sensed there was more truth to it than humor. He'd worked with female officers before, and while some had been excellent, others had struggled with the physical and cultural demands of special operations environments. This woman seemed to fit neither category completely. As the evening continued, Marcus noticed that while she participated in the conversations, she skillfully deflected most personal questions about her background. When asked about previous assignments, she would redirect the conversation to ask about the questioner's experiences. When someone inquired about her training, she would shift focus to discussing upcoming mission requirements. It was a masterful performance of social engagement without revelation, and Marcus began to suspect that her evasiveness was deliberate rather than accidental. People with certain types of military backgrounds were trained to be circumspect about their experiences, particularly if those experiences involved classified operations or sensitive assignments. The realization made Marcus even more curious about who she really was and what kind of background had prepared her for this assignment. Her competence was undeniable, but her mystery was intriguing. As the evening wound down and team members began heading back to base housing, Marcus decided he would make it a priority to learn more about their enigmatic liaison. "Thanks for dinner," she said as the group prepared to leave Murphy's. "It was good to meet everyone in a more relaxed setting." "Same here," Marcus replied. "Looking forward to working with you on this mission. Should be interesting." "Yes," she agreed, meeting his eyes directly. "I think it will be very interesting indeed." As Marcus walked back to his quarters that night, he reflected on the day's events. Something about their new liaison didn't add up, but in a good way. Her competence exceeded what he would expect from a typical Pentagon intelligence officer, and her confidence suggested experience that went beyond theoretical knowledge. He made a mental note to do some discreet research about her background. In the special operations community, information about personnel assignments was often readily available through informal networks. Someone would know where she had served before this assignment, and Marcus was determined to solve the mystery of their remarkably capable liaison. The mission ahead promised to be challenging enough without additional complications. But Marcus found himself looking forward to working more closely with someone who clearly had more depth than her official assignment suggested. Whatever her background, she had already proven herself valuable to the team, and that was what ultimately mattered in their business. As he prepared for sleep, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that the most interesting aspects of working with their new liaison had yet to be revealed. Tomorrow would bring more training and preparation, and with it, more opportunities to understand the woman who had impressed his entire team on her first day. The second week of training brought more intensive preparation for Operation Northwind, and with it, more opportunities for Marcus to observe their liaison in action. Each day seemed to reveal new layers of competence that challenged his assumptions about her background and experience. During weapons familiarization exercises, she demonstrated proficiency with firearms that went well beyond basic military training. When the team was testing equipment configurations, she offered suggestions based on what she described as field experience, with similar gear in challenging environments. Her recommendations consistently proved sound, leading Marcus to suspect that her mysterious background included significant operational experience. The breakthrough came during a close-quarters combat training session. The team was practicing room-clearing procedures when one of the role players, a young sailor assigned to act as a hostile, became overly enthusiastic in his performance. As Petty Officer Kim rounded a corner during the exercise, the sailor swung a training weapon with excessive force, creating a dangerous situation that could have resulted in serious injury. Before Marcus or any of the other SEALs could react, their liaison moved with lightning speed. In a fluid motion that spoke of extensive martial arts training, she disarmed the sailor and controlled him, using techniques that Marcus recognized as advanced hand-to-hand combat skills. The entire sequence took less than 3 seconds and demonstrated a level of physical capability that was definitely not taught in typical military intelligence schools. "Where the hell did you learn to do that?" Jake Sullivan asked, voicing what everyone was thinking. "Same place I learned everything else," she replied, helping the somewhat embarrassed sailor to his feet. Through practice and good instructors, the incident sparked increased speculation among the team members about her background. During lunch that day, the conversation centered around theories about her previous assignments. Some suggested she might be a former Marine Corps intelligence specialist. Others wondered if she had served with Army Special Forces in an intelligence capacity. Marcus found himself paying closer attention to small details about her behavior and mannerisms. The way she maintained situational awareness, constantly scanning her environment even during casual conversations. How she positioned herself to maintain visual contact with entrances and exits. The unconscious way she checked her equipment and weapons, behaviors that suggested someone accustomed to operating in hostile environments. "You know what I think?" Tony Chen said during one of their private discussions. "I think she's been in some seriously dangerous places. Look at how she moves, how she thinks about security." That's not desk jockey behavior, Marcus agreed, but he was becoming increasingly frustrated by his inability to determine exactly what her background was. In the small world of special operations, people usually knew each other by reputation, if not personally. The fact that none of his extensive contacts could provide information about her suggested either a very specialized assignment history or deliberate operational security. The third week brought the team's final major training exercise, a complex scenario designed to test every aspect of their preparation for the upcoming mission. The exercise would run for 72 hours and simulate the conditions they could expect to encounter in Eastern Europe, including communications challenges, equipment failures, and changing intelligence requirements. Their liaison would be operating from a forward command post, coordinating between the field teams and higher headquarters, while providing real-time intelligence updates based on simulated enemy activities. It was a demanding role that required technical expertise, tactical understanding, and the ability to make rapid decisions under pressure. Marcus was assigned as team leader for one of the assault elements, responsible for coordinating with the command post to ensure his team received timely intelligence updates. This would give him extended radio contact with their liaison and opportunities to assess her performance under simulated combat conditions. The exercise began before dawn with the teams infiltrating their respective objective areas. Communications conditions were deliberately degraded to simulate electronic warfare environments, requiring careful coordination to maintain contact between units. From the first radio check, it was clear that their liaison was operating at a level that exceeded Marcus's highest expectations. Her voice over the radio was calm and professional, even when reporting simulated enemy contact or equipment failures. She provided concise, relevant information without unnecessary chatter, and her timing for intelligence updates seemed to anticipate the team's needs. During one particularly complex phase of the operation, when multiple teams were maneuvering simultaneously, her coordination prevented several potential tactical errors that could have compromised the mission. Midway through the second day, the exercise controllers introduced a communications failure that cut contact between Marcus's team and the command post. Standard procedure called for the team to continue with their planned mission while attempting to re-establish communications through alternative means. After 30 minutes without contact, Marcus's radio crackled with an unexpected transmission. Thunder 6. This is Overwatch. Can you receive? The voice was their liaison, using a call sign that wasn't part of the standard exercise communications plan. Overwatch. This is Thunder 6. I read you loud and clear. How are you transmitting? Alternative communications method. Are you prepared to receive updated intelligence? Marcus was puzzled by the capability she was demonstrating. The exercise controllers had simulated a complete communications failure, yet somehow she had found a way to re-establish contact. Roger. Send your traffic. Enemy patrol pattern has changed. Your primary route is compromised. Recommend shifting to alternate route, Charlie, but be advised of increased security presence near Checkpoint 3. The information proved accurate, and Marcus's team successfully completed their mission objectives while avoiding simulated enemy contact. After the exercise, he learned that their liaison had used backup satellite communications equipment to maintain contact with the field teams. Equipment that most intelligence officers wouldn't know how to operate, let alone have access to. During the exercise debrief, Commander Walsh praised the team's performance and specifically mentioned the exceptional intelligence support that had contributed to the successful outcome. Several team members nodded in agreement, acknowledging that their liaison had consistently provided valuable support throughout the exercise. Outstanding work, the commander continued, addressing their liaison directly. Your coordination and communication during the simulated equipment failures were particularly impressive. Where did you develop those skills? Various assignments, sir, she replied. You learn to adapt when standard procedures don't work. It was another professionally evasive response, but delivered with the confidence of someone who had actually lived through situations where adaptation was necessary for survival rather than just exercise success. That evening, as the team celebrated the successful completion of their training cycle, Marcus decided to make one more attempt to learn something about their liaison's background. The informal atmosphere at Murphy's pub seemed like the right environment for a more direct conversation. Can I ask you something? Marcus said. finding a moment when they were standing apart from the rest of the group. "You can ask," she replied with a slight smile. "No guarantee I'll answer." "I'm allos we are indraid." "Fair enough. I've been in the teams for 6 years, and I've worked with a lot of intelligence officers from a lot of different backgrounds. You're not like any of them. Your tactical knowledge, your technical skills, the way you handle yourself. It's more like working with another special operations professional than a traditional intelligence liaison." She studied his face for a moment before responding. "Maybe that's because that's what I am." The answer surprised Marcus with its directness after weeks of carefully evasive responses. "What do you mean?" "1. I mean that intelligence support isn't my primary military occupation. I'm here because my command thought this mission would benefit from someone with both intelligence expertise and operational experience." "What kind of operational experience?" "The kind that means I understand what you and your team do because I've done similar work myself." Marcus felt pieces of a puzzle beginning to fall into place. "Your special operations. That's one way to describe it," she acknowledged. "What's your actual rank?" The question came out before Marcus had time to consider whether it was appropriate to ask so directly. Her expression became serious, and for a moment Marcus wondered if he had overstepped some boundary. Then, she seemed to make a decision. "Lieutenant Commander," she said quietly. Marcus felt the bottom drop out of his stomach. Lieutenant Commander was a senior officer rank, equivalent to major in the Army or Marines. If she was telling the truth, she outranked not only him but most of the other team members, and was only one rank below their commanding officer. "You've been letting us treat you like a junior intelligence officer for 3 weeks, Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper. "You've been treating me like a member of the team," she corrected. "That's what I wanted." The implications of her revelation began sinking in. A lieutenant commander with special operations experience wouldn't be assigned as a simple intelligence liaison unless there were extraordinary circumstances. Either the mission was more significant than they'd been told, or she had specialized knowledge or capabilities that made her personally essential to its success. "There's more, isn't there?" Marcus asked. "This isn't just about intelligence support for a standard mission." "There's always more," she replied. "But some things need to wait for the right time and the right security clearance level." Marcus realized that his curiosity about their liaison had led him into waters much deeper than he had anticipated. Whatever her full story was, it was clear that Operation Northwind involved more complexity and higher stakes than he had understood. "Why are you telling me this now?" he asked. "Because tomorrow we start the final mission briefings, and you're going to learn some things that will make more sense if you understand who I really am and why I'm here." As if on cue, Commander Walsh approached their quiet corner of the pub. "Sorry to interrupt, but I need to speak with both of you. We just received updated orders from SOCOM. The mission timeline has been accelerated, and there have been some significant changes to the operational requirements." Marcus felt a chill as he realized that whatever he had thought he knew about Operation Northwind was about to change dramatically. He looked at their liaison, Lieutenant Commander, and saw in her expression a seriousness that suggested tomorrow's briefings would reveal challenges none of them had been prepared for. "We'll continue this conversation later," she said to Marcus, then turned to Commander Walsh. "What kind of changes are we talking about, sir?" "The kind that mean everything we've trained for just became significantly more complicated," the commander replied grimly. "I'll brief the full team in the morning, but I wanted to give you both advance warning. This mission just became a lot more important and a lot more dangerous." As Marcus walked back to his quarters that night, his mind raced with questions about the woman who had just revealed herself to be so much more than she had appeared. Her rank, her background, and her presence on this mission suggested that Operation Northwind was about to become something entirely different from what any of them had expected. The most unsettling realization was that despite weeks of training together, he was beginning to understand that he knew almost nothing about what they were really being asked to do, or why someone with her apparent qualifications had been deemed necessary for their success. Tomorrow would bring answers, but Marcus suspected that those answers would raise even more serious questions about the true nature of their mission and the risks they would be facing. As he tried to sleep, one thought kept returning. If a lieutenant commander with special operations experience had been assigned to support their mission, then whatever they were about to undertake was far more significant than anyone had been willing to admit. The revelation about her rank was just the beginning, and Marcus had the uncomfortable feeling that the biggest surprises were yet to come. The final briefing room felt different as SEAL Team 7 assembled the next morning. The casual atmosphere that had characterized their previous meetings was replaced by intention that suggested everyone understood they were about to learn something significant. Commander Walsh entered with their liaison. Lieutenant Commander, Marcus reminded himself, and several other senior officers that Marcus didn't recognize. Gentlemen, Commander Walsh began. What I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest levels. Operation Northwind is not the mission you've been training for. That was cover for operational security purposes. The real mission is Operation Dark Waters, and it's considerably more complex than anything we've previously discussed. Quote, 2020-24, 2I, end quote. Marcus felt his stomach tighten as he realized his suspicions from the previous evening had been correct. The woman sitting calmly at the front of the room had known this moment was coming, had been preparing for it while the rest of them believed they were training for something entirely different. The target is not a terrorist facility in Eastern Europe, the commander continued. It's a nuclear submarine that has been captured by hostile forces in the Baltic Sea. The submarine contains classified technology that cannot be allowed to fall into enemy hands, and the crew of 87 sailors who are being held hostage. The room erupted in surprised murmurs as the team members absorbed the magnitude of what they were being asked to do. Submarine rescue and recovery operations were among the most technically challenging missions in special operations, requiring specialized equipment, extensive underwater training, and coordination with multiple military branches. This is where Lieutenant Commander Sarah Mitchell comes in, Commander Walsh said, indicating their liaison. Commander Mitchell is not primarily an intelligence officer. She's a former Navy diver and submarine rescue specialist who has been working with classified submarine technologies for the past 8 years. She's the leading expert on the specific systems aboard the captured vessel. Marcus felt the final pieces of the puzzle falling into place. Her tactical knowledge, her understanding of special operations, her evasiveness about her background. It all made sense now. She wasn't just an intelligence liaison. She was one of the most qualified people in the Navy for exactly this type of mission. Commander Mitchell stood and moved to the front of the room with the confident bearing that Marcus now realized reflected her true position and experience. The submarine in question is the USS Virginia, a nuclear attack submarine that was conducting classified trials of new sonar and communication systems when it was disabled by what appeared to be a coordinated cyber attack. She activated a large display screen showing technical diagrams of the submarine and its internal systems. The attack caused multiple system failures that left the submarine disabled on the surface. Before the crew could restore power and submerge, they were boarded by hostile forces using what we believe were former Soviet Naval Special Operations personnel. Marcus studied the technical specifications she was presenting, trying to understand the complexity of what they were being asked to accomplish. Submarine rescue operations typically required months of planning and specialized equipment that wasn't readily available to standard special operations units. The hostiles are demanding the release of several high-value prisoners in exchange for the crew in the submarine, Commander Mitchell continued. However, the classified technology aboard the Virginia makes that option unacceptable from a national security standpoint. We have 72 hours before they threaten to execute the crew members. What exactly is our mission? Asked Tony Chen, the team's senior enlisted advisor. We're going to retake the submarine, Commander Mitchell replied matter-of-factly. I'll be going in with you to handle the technical aspects of securing the classified systems and ensuring the submarine can be safely operated once we've neutralized the hostile forces. The room fell silent as the team members absorbed the implications. They were being asked to conduct an assault on a nuclear submarine in hostile waters against an unknown number of enemies with specialized naval training, while ensuring the safety of nearly 90 hostages and preventing the loss of critical national security technology. With respect, ma'am, Jake Sullivan said, that sounds like a mission that would typically require a much larger force and months of specialized training. Under normal circumstances, you'd be correct, Commander Mitchell acknowledged. But we don't have months, and a larger force would be detected long before it could reach the submarine. This mission requires a small, highly skilled team that can infiltrate covertly and act quickly once aboard the vessel. Marcus raised his hand. What's your role in the actual assault phase? Technical support, from a safe distance, or are you planning to go aboard with us? Commander Mitchell met his eyes directly. I'll be leading the technical team that secures the submarine's critical systems. That means I'll be going in with the first wave of the assault. The statement drew surprised looks from several team members. Having a senior officer participate directly in an assault was unusual, particularly one involving such high risks and technical complexity. I know what you're thinking, she continued, but I'm the only person available who has both the technical knowledge to handle the submarine systems and the operational experience to function effectively in a combat environment. My participation isn't optional, it's essential for mission success. Commander Walsh stepped forward again. I want to be clear about something. This mission is entirely voluntary. Given the risks involved and the time constraints we're facing, anyone who wishes to decline participation can do so without any negative consequences to their career or standing. Marcus looked around the room at his teammates. These were men who had volunteered for the most dangerous assignments the Navy had to offer. But this mission represented challenges that none of them had previously faced. The silence stretched for nearly a minute before Tony Chen spoke. Speaking for myself, sir, I'm in. But I have some questions about equipment and support. One by one, each team member indicated their willingness to proceed with the mission. As Marcus listened to his teammates commit to what was arguably the most dangerous mission any of them had ever been offered, he felt a mixture of pride and apprehension that reflected the gravity of what they were undertaking. Outstanding, Commander Walsh said. Commander Mitchell will brief you on the technical requirements and operational procedures. We leave for the staging area in 6 hours. As the formal briefing ended and the team began discussing technical details, Marcus approached Commander Mitchell directly. The revelation of her true role and the mission's real parameters had answered many of his questions, but raised others that seemed even more significant. Can I ask you something? Marcus said, echoing his question from the previous evening. Go ahead, she replied, gathering her briefing materials. Last night you said your rank was Lieutenant Commander. But Commander Walsh just introduced you as Commander Mitchell. Which is it? She paused in her activities and looked at him with an expression that suggested she was deciding how much truth to share. My actual rank is Captain, she said quietly. But I thought Lieutenant Commander was as much as you could handle at that point in the conversation. Marcus felt his knees weaken slightly. Captain was a senior field-grade rank, equivalent to colonel in the Army or Marines. Officers of that rank typically commanded major units or served in senior staff positions at the highest levels of military command. They definitely didn't serve as intelligence liaisons for SEAL team missions unless something extraordinary was involved. You're telling me that a Navy captain with submarine and special operations experience has been assigned to go into combat with our team? Marcus said, trying to process the implications. What I'm telling you is that this mission is important enough that the Navy is willing to risk a senior officer with unique qualifications to ensure it succeeds, she corrected. The technology aboard that submarine represents years of research and development that cannot be replaced. The lives of 87 sailors depend on our success, and the national security implications of failure are serious enough that normal risk calculations don't apply. Marcus realized that everything about Operation Dark Waters was designed to emphasize its critical importance. The accelerated timeline, the specialized personnel, the willingness to risk a senior officer in direct combat, all of it pointed to stakes that were much higher than he had initially understood. Are you worried about leading technical personnel into a combat situation? Marcus asked. Are you worried about conducting submarine operations without technical expertise? She countered. The point was valid. Marcus and his teammates were exceptional at special operations, but none of them had experience with the complex systems aboard nuclear submarines. Without her knowledge and capabilities, their mission would be nearly impossible to complete successfully. Besides, she continued with a slight smile, I may outrank you, but I don't outshoot you. I'm counting on you and your team to handle the tactical aspects, while I focus on the technical requirements." As the team prepared for departure, Marcus reflected on the extraordinary chain of events that had led to this moment. 3 weeks earlier, he had been curious about a mysterious intelligence liaison who seemed more capable than her apparent position suggested. Now he was preparing for one of the most challenging missions of his career, working alongside a senior officer whose expertise was essential for success. The mission ahead would test every aspect of their training and capabilities, but Marcus felt confident in his team and their unlikely leader. Captain Mitchell had demonstrated her competence repeatedly over the past 3 weeks, and her willingness to risk her career and life for the mission's success spoke to the kind of leadership that inspired exceptional performance. As they boarded the aircraft that would take them to the staging area, Marcus caught Commander Mitchell's attention. "Captain," he said formally, "it's been an honor training with you. I look forward to completing this mission successfully." "The honor has been mine, Staff Sergeant," she replied, using his rank with the respect that reflected her understanding of his capabilities and experience. "Let's go bring those sailors home." The aircraft lifted off into the afternoon sky, carrying SEAL Team 7 and their remarkable commander toward what would prove to be one of the most challenging and significant missions in recent military history. As Marcus looked out the window at the receding coastline, he reflected on the lesson he'd learned about making assumptions based on appearances and initial impressions. Captain Sarah Mitchell had taught him and his entire team that competence and leadership could come in unexpected forms, and that sometimes the most important qualifications weren't immediately visible. Her willingness to serve alongside enlisted personnel, despite her senior rank and specialized expertise, demonstrated the kind of humility and dedication that made truly exceptional leaders. The mission ahead would be dangerous and complex, but Marcus knew they were prepared. More importantly, he knew they were led by someone whose qualifications and character had been proven through weeks of training and years of distinguished service. Whatever challenges Operation Dark Waters presented, they would face them together as a team that had learned to respect each other's capabilities regardless of rank, gender, or background. As the aircraft flew toward their destination, Marcus smiled slightly as he remembered his initial assumptions about their junior intelligence liaison. He had learned a valuable lesson about making judgments based on appearances, and he suspected that lesson would serve him well throughout his remaining military career and beyond. The mission that awaited them would test everything they had learned, but Marcus felt ready for the challenge. After all, they had Captain Sarah Mitchell leading their technical operations, and her track record suggested that underestimating her capabilities would be the enemy's mistake, not theirs.